All right. So before we get started here, actually, I kind of have an idea. I'm going to wingding you guys a little bit. You don't know this is coming. So I'm so excited about this. Instead of this just being a one-time debate, I think we should make this a thing. You know, kind of like a panel podcast, right? The two of you, maybe we bring in a third and I'll moderate it, which would be good practice for me to practice not talking so much. And so we need a name. We need a name for the show before we get started. So seeing that we're all CrossFit level 3 trainers, I thought maybe we go with something like I'll just spitball some. You guys tell me what you think. So we could do something simple like the 3L3s, right? Or hold on, maybe something less serious. Like I'm thinking, not in my box.
I like
what do you
that.
think?
That's not bad.
Not in my box?
Bad at all. Yeah.
Not in my box. All right. Then I thought, I don't know. What about 3 bros, 1 box?
I like the not in my box.
No.
Yeah,
Okay. What about something
yeah.
for our shower listeners? You know, we could do something like clean it till it's a jerk. Right. But then I thought maybe
you're going too far, Danny. You're going too far.
Okay,
you had it.
Oh, I mean, okay. Well, what about these? So then I thought something fun, but maybe not so over the edge. What about inappropriate stimulus?
That's not bad either. That's actually not bad either. I like the not in my box thing. I feel like that is like, well, yeah, you put the stamp down on it.
Yeah, it really says what we're going to talk about.
But here we go though. So I really like inappropriate stimulus. I thought it's fun, not my box fun. Anyway, but then I have this whole thing of naming things what people can't spell. So like we have a podcast, gas station cappuccino, and like honestly, I got to do Google searches because there's 2 P's, there's 2 C's, things are in weird spots. Or caffeine and kilos, like is the ego first, the I go first. Like I wear it every day. I have to like do spell checks sometimes. So inappropriate. Anyway, so I'm thinking, what about, here we go. Mostly unbroken. You guys like mostly unbroken?
That's how I live my life right now.
No,
not in my box. On that one.
Yeah, I think not in my box wins, dude.
There we go.
I want that on a shirt. Like,
all right, not in my box.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah.
All right. So there we go. So welcome to the first episode of Not in My Box. All right. So here we go. With me, I have Wes Piatt, CrossFit red shirt, previous games athlete, affiliate owner, coach of coaches, leader of men. All right. And Seth Page, head programmer for Jump Ship Training, newest member of the CrossFit Athlete Council, and part-time internet villain.
Villain?
I'm Danny Lehr from Caffeine and Kilos. Longtime gym owner and caffeine addicts. So first things first, let's make sure everyone gets to know you guys so they know who to trust. So we'll do some little simple questions. Seth, what did you have for lunch today?
I'm in Hawaii, dude. It's 10:30 a.m.
So nothing. All right.
Lunch
Seth
has not been had.
Seth doesn't eat lunch. All right, Wes, what did you have for lunch today?
I had chicken from Costco and one of these sweet potato little packet things.
Little pack things? Okay.
Nice.
All right, there we go. Okay. Did you work out yet? Seth, did you work out today?
Not yet.
No food, no workout. Who knows what he's doing? All right. Wes, what about you? Did you work out today?
Yep.
What'd you do?
21, 15, 9 knees to elbows and overhead squats. That was the CAP programming.
I like that.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I like that too. That's a good one. All right. We did a little double under muscle up workout. It was a good time.
What was it?
It was 3-minute rounds. So 5 3-minute rounds, 60 double unders, 5 muscle ups.
Ooh.
Yeah. I took it as a skill work session and just did 1 round every 3 minutes and kind of like rested. Right. But some people Buddy got 10 rounds. He went through twice every 3 minutes. That's pretty good.
Of course he did.
I think this is interesting. So we have Wes, who's fed and exercised, and we have Seth, who's completely fitness fasted. So it'll be interesting to see whose brain works faster in this one.
I don't know, man. I feel like I get dumber the more I work out. I'm not going to lie.
Depends how hard I work out.
Two more questions, and these are really how much someone should trust you, right? So, for the listeners, if you're listening to someone's programming advice, I know me personally, I kind of want to know, like, what's your favorite fruit? Is like are you a mango guy? Is it more of like an apricot situation? I feel like this is really going to get to the bare bones here. What are we looking at, Seth?
Pineapple, without question. That's number one.
You're in Hawaii. No, you get a pass there. Wes, what about you?
Honey Crisp apple. It's got to be a Honey Crisp.
Got to be the Honey Crisp. Very specific. And how do you like your steak cooked?
Medium.
Okay, that's a little interesting there. All right, medium rare and apricots. That's where I'm at. So
Ooh,
just so everyone,
apricots.
yeah, you learn a little bit about somebody. You know what kind of fruit we do. How do we like our steaks cooked? All right, so there's a little internet conversation about specifically about in affiliates was how it was brought up. We don't have to stick to exactly that, but just the idea of in a day of CrossFit, is it a two pieces in the class situation or just one piece in the class? Is one workout of the day and that's it? Maybe with some, skill work in the warm up or something like that. Or a lot of gyms these days, and have for years now, it's been probably about 10 years or so since it's been really popular, is a strength portion followed by a Metcon portion. And so Wes came out in support of the one workout a day. Seth came out and said, although he sees the benefits there, he's a believer that the two pieces a day is really better for the average gym, the average person, and an affiliate, essentially. But there's a lot of nuance with this. Right. And so I said, well, guys, this is really funny because at my affiliate, we've been operating since 2008. So we've done a lot of different things. We've done the one workout. We did for a long time. We did a lot of days that had the strength and then the Metcon components. And just recently, we went to the one workout a day. We went back to that. And I said, this is interesting because I can argue this both directions. And I think I could actually steel man this both directions. I can present your argument better than you, and then I'll tell you why it's wrong. But I'll do that going both ways because we've done them all. We've done them both. Yeah. And so let's hear it. And so we'll do it like this is one of you will go first and you'll have 5 minutes max. You don't even have to take that long. Just kind of present why you think that's more beneficial. And then the other person will have 5 uninterrupted minutes. If you choose to take it all, you don't have to go for a full 5 minutes. And then afterwards, we'll just kind of break down some of the different things that are brought up and talk about them. And just, in the end, probably all walk away with the same opinion that we have now. What do you guys think?
That sounds perfect.
Yeah, sounds like we could sum this up real quick.
Yeah, exactly. So how do we decide who goes first? I think that we basically the only reasonable way. So Wes, how much you snatch?
Oh God, I don't even want to tell you these days,
dude. It's better than mine, so don't worry about it.
Oh, here we go.
Number.
Yeah, let me come in first.
What we could do over the last 3 years. You can have a 3-year buffer. Like, what have you snatched in the last 3 years? I feel like that might be a more,
Yeah, 185.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it to you. I'm probably 165, 175 would be the most I'd probably snatch.
I wanted to say 205 so bad, but I'm like, no, it wasn't really that good. It was like,
no.
Oh, when I made, and so.
Okay. Well, yeah,
no, you win.
That is rough, guys. But to be clear, for both of you, that's about body weight.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm pretty damn close to that right now.
That's what you're. Wait, and Seth, you're what?
A little over. At the time, I probably weighed 155 at the time I did that. So it's probably like 15, 20 pounds over body weight. So
anyone who thinks that it's absolutely disgusting, just know, it's body weight, pretty close to it, maybe a little over. So that's respectable, All right. Nobody snatches body weight without having some idea what they're doing, So there's something to be said for that. All right, Wes, you're the big winner. Cool. So let's go for it. You got 5 minutes. You're going to present the case for doing one workout in a class at a average CrossFit affiliate.
So to get started, I think what I was going after was specifically the strength Metcon, where we're going through these cycles of Lehr programming, or we're going through these 5x5 cycles, whatever it may be. And we're overdoing that sagittal plane work. So that's specifically what I'm talking about. And if we go back to when affiliates first started, everybody was doing .com. They were doing one workout a day, and then people started getting better. And in the affiliate, they started making regionals. And when they started making semifinals and regionals in the affiliate, they got stoked. This is awesome. This is cool. We have fit people here. Hey, maybe we can even get a team to go. You know what we should do? We should program a little bit more, a strength piece, because we knew that by getting stronger, it would help us get to regionals. So I think that is why most affiliates started to actually adopt the strength Metcon piece, was because there used to actually be a chance to get a good amount of people out of your gym to make a team and even have some individuals go as well. And that was really boosting for the whole ecosystem of the gym, right? Like everybody was stoked when they got to go to regionals and watch their friends compete on the floor. It's not that anymore. We're separate. Affiliates and games competitors and semifinals competitors and everything, there's too much of a gap, in my opinion, now. And I think that what needs to be focused on more in the affiliates is, yeah, we need to stay strong, but we need to keep these people mobile. We need to keep them fit, and we need to keep them healthy. And when I look at, we've gone through the strength and Metcon pieces as well. And I did it myself, for a long time, probably over-programmed at the gym for sure, because I was just basically wanted people to work out with me to help me train for the games, and it was fun. But man, if I really look back on it, man, like my gym was pretty beat up back then. And I can think back at Kenny, and I can think back at Scott and these guys that were always having these little tweaks and these things going on. And I was like, oh, it's cool, man. Like me too, right? And now the way that we program is, we take CAP programming and we adjust it to what we need for our demographic. And I wish more affiliates would either make their own programming for their affiliates, knowing their members better, getting results, collecting data, checking back in, creating KPIs, and like really doing the due diligence of like, yes, Jenny is getting better because she went from doing a kip swing with a tuck up to now she's doing knees to elbows in sets of 5. And she wasn't doing that last December. And I know that because it's written down and I could see that. And I think if we got back to an idea of like, hey, let's take all of the things that maybe the outside community talks crap about CrossFit with, like we don't move outside the sagittal plane. We don't do slow controlled tempo work. We don't do isometric work. We don't do the things to keep the, little muscles working and not the big ones. Like instead of doing strength Metcon, why not do the stuff outside the sagittal plane work and work on the body work and do the things like skill work, maybe on a muscle up or something like that from the low rings for 10 minutes, and then go into just a high intensity piece instead of, hey guys, we're going to do some back squats. Go ahead and give me 5 when you get your bar on your rack and I'll watch you. That's not what I want to see in my affiliate or other affiliates when I walk in there or drop in. I want to see that they're getting coached. So for example, for today, how am I doing on time, Danny?
Oh, you got a minute and a half. You're 3.5 in.
So for today, for example, we coached the class of 21-15-9 knees to elbows and overhead squats. Both of those are pretty technical movements that need a lot of time to be warmed up and to go through specific warm-ups. I had 10 minutes left at the end of my class today, which is ideal and exactly what I want, to be able to stretch people out, get them back to homeostasis, have them high five somebody next to them and say, good job, make sure all the equipment is put away and I get the scores on the board. And everybody was dying after the workout. But when they left the gym, they looked really good. They were upright and they were laughing and they had a color back in their face. And if I said, hey, do a squat, they probably could and stand back up without passing out. And that's what I would love to see. And that was my rant and the whole point of it on Instagram. And I'm stoked that we're here.
Real quick, Wes, on that one thing you mentioned at one point is you said doing CAP programming. Just to clarify for people, that is the CrossFit affiliate programming. It's the official programming that's put out by CrossFit HQ. So just in case somebody didn't know what that CAP word meant, that's where we're at there. All right. I think, so yeah, sums it up. All right. So now, Seth, let's hear what you think about doing a strength component as well as Metcon, or however we're trying to get across your point there.
Yeah, and I think Wes made a bunch of great points, and I agree with most everything that he said. The thing that I would say is this has been kind of my platform in terms of like, because I write programming for my gyms, and we have other gyms that follow my programming as well. And it's just that I'm trying to give opportunities in the program, trying to give opportunities of exposure to different movements and different things. And so if I'm thinking about this in a large general viewpoint, just like I guess CAP would have to, because there's so many gyms that would follow CAP. I'm just trying to balance things out. So one of the things I don't do that Wes mentioned in terms of me providing 2 pieces as part of the program, probably 3 to 4 times, 2 to 4 times, we'll say, out of the 6 days a week we program, is we don't run any sort of cycles. So like I'm totally in agreement that like something like a Wendler or something in your affiliate class as well as a program is pretty inappropriate, because people are moving at all different speeds of progression. And so to try to force somebody through something very templated and rigid, I think is a big mistake and kind of goes against a lot of the GPP principles of the methodology to begin with. Now, having said that, I do really like the balance a lot of days of having a strength component and a component that gets your heart rate up. More often than not, both the strength and the conditioning will have skill components to it as well. Like every movement requires some level of skill. It's varying, anything from a whole video I just did about a push-up, because how many people do just terrible push-ups in our gyms and they think that they're doing well. It's just like embarrassingly bad, all the way to a snatch, like you mentioned, which takes decades of practice and reps, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of reps to master, right? So what I like to do with my program is I like to, first of all, we do conditioning first most of the time if we have two pieces. The conditioning can be used as twofold. You can start to teach skill as part of the warm-up to get people ready for conditioning, start to increase range of motion, get blood pumping, all those things. And then the conditioning has to balance well with the second part. Sometimes the second part's a barbell strength, maybe it's a gymnastic strength, maybe it's something else. But what's going to happen is the movement patterns are going to fall in line from the conditioning to the secondary piece. So there isn't an issue of coaching where, okay, we have burpees, muscle ups, name other high skill movement, and then we have squat snatches after. That would be an unreasonable load on a coach and a gym member to be able to learn anything meaningful from 3 to 4 high skill movements, 2 parts jammed into 60 minutes. So instead, the movement patterns from the workout, if we do the conditioning first, must carry over to the strength. You could do Diane, and then you could have people pull an EMOM of singles on deadlifts or something after. Just a random example off the top of my head. But no matter what, the coaching, the foundational points of performance are probably already been focused on prior to the conditioning starting, and then can carry over into the lift. And you can add to it as things get heavier or conditions change in terms of what the stimulus is on that barbell versus the barbell in the workout. And I think you can marry those two things together very effectively, balance out the total volume between the two pieces, make sure the stimuluses are in line so that not both the Metcon and the conditioning are both meant to be 100% ram your head through the wall. They have to carry balance. And if you do that effectively and you're experienced enough as a programmer and a coach, I think you can deliver a lot of value to your class that way, just because those athletes then get the consistency of some of those skills a little more often. And they get to move some reps with some load to start to get some feedback, be coached a little bit. I think a lot of times, a lot of coaches really worry about the coaching component of class, which is unspeakably important. It's super, super important. But when you're coaching, at least from my perspective, you're just trying to find little nuggets to give them that they can absorb, digest, and then show you right away. Something they can take home with them and then replicate next time. I think a lot of coaches in classes try to really overdo it on one piece. They teach 7 different parts of a progression of a movement and then expect that athlete to be able to regurgitate that next time that comes back up. They're starting over again because it was so overwhelming that they didn't even take the first part in that they were at. And I think that happens a lot in gyms. So as far as just kind of keeping the coaching points to a few points of performance, very dialed in, very specific to the session, I think you can put it all together and have a very cohesive, successful program, even if you want to use a couple pieces, 3-4 days a week.
Great. You have 444. So far, Seth is definitely doing a better job of taking advantage of his time. So that's great. So a few questions, and we'll kind of bounce around here. One thing you mentioned is doing skills more often for consistency. All right. And so this was something that I had thought about, in regards to doing like the Metcon first and using the same movement patterns going into the strength portion. Right. Something that's interesting about that is on Instagram, when you were talking about it, you were mentioning how part of the reason for that is athletes who, your members that come into the gym 2 to 3 times a week. And so if you only see them 2 to 3 times a week, there's a concern of getting enough movement patterns in, enough reps in those movement patterns in, right?
More or less. Yep.
That's interesting to me, is I was more of a proponent of the opposite, not getting fewer reps in specifically. But if you're going to do a strength component and then a metabolic conditioning component, to mix those up. And I got this idea originally back in the early 2010s from Mike Rutherford and his black box programming, right? And so his theory, based on that same point of most people you only see 2 to 3 times a week, if they come in on, say, Monday, and the workout is, some dumbbell snatch and rowing or something, and then there's or your Diane, and then some heavy deadlifts after, and they only come in one other day, like in that entire week of training, they basically pulled, and that's all they did. And there's other movement patterns they didn't touch on at all. Mm-hmm. And so personally, when we were programming more of a strength plus Metcon thing, I liked going the other route which was programming a strength movement, and say the strength was squats, then doing some sort of a Metcon that is everything else, right? And when I say everything else, what I mean is I'm breaking down, instead of looking at muscle groupings, like classic bodybuilder, but movement patterns, right? So a squat, a hinge, press, and a pull, right? Upper body push, upper body pull. And so if you're doing a squat as the strength, then the Metcon touching on those other aspects, either being some sort of a hinging movement, and a upper body push, upper body pull, monostructural, like those things, obviously not all of them every time, but like those things mixed in with the idea and keeping reps in a range, like under, ideally kind of in that 45-ish range, right? So enough for stimulus, but like definitely less than 70, with the idea that you do a little bit of everything. The next day they can come back and they can do those same movement patterns. And by doing that, you're actually touching on these different movement patterns. And so if that person only comes in twice a week, they did every movement pattern, during those twice a week, compared to if they come in and it's all pull, 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 hinge, 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 and they only come in one other day, they might go that entire week only doing one movement pattern. Furthermore, they might be so beat up from that day of Diane and then heavy pulls. And I know that's the coach's job to not let them be so beat up from it. However, just that one movement pattern over and over again is definitely going to be more taxing on their central nervous system movement in general. So how do you feel about, do you think there's some efficacy to that? Do you think that that idea of doing the same movement pattern in the strength and the Metcon is ideal, or is that too much one movement pattern? And for your average person who's in 2 to 3 days a week, would they be maybe better served by doing more movement patterns at lower volumes? And so Seth, you respond first, because I was really kind of at you more. And I'd love to hear Wes's thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I think what you're saying can work. I guess part of why I don't do it that way is the compromise of coaching. So I like to have a focused pattern, so to speak, as the points of performance or class. So if I'm asking my coaches at varying degrees of skill and experience to coach successfully back squats into then 3 other movements in a triplet to follow, there's a good chance there's not going to be a lot coached. There's going to be plenty probably modified and scaled, but not as much coaching as I might like. And so that's part of it. The other thing that I really, really harp on, and I'm feeling it myself as I get older, and I know I've had just countless feedback from others, is doing the movement pattern and the conditioning first and then lifting after opens up a new range of motion that a simple warm-up may not get you into. So on Wes's workout today, he talked about with knees to elbows and overhead squats. Like if there was an overhead squat lift after, his depth is already on point, his stability is turned on, the pattern's built. It's much quicker to get him into some more challenging weights that will actually provide a heavy enough stimulus to make some sort of meaningful change. Whereas if that sort of warm-up doesn't happen, there's a chance that somebody might get more skilled in their pattern or develop a little more flexibility, a touch, or learn something, but you may not have actually hit the central nervous system enough to demand that adaptation that we're looking for in those sessions. So that would be my other side of the coin to what you were saying, Danny. And to be fair, with all of these different perspectives, I don't think there's a right and a wrong. You can skin the cat 1,000 ways and you can be super, super effective with it. This is just the style over the 9 gyms I've owned, the 17 years writing affiliate programming. This is where I've landed for whatever reason, good, bad, or indifferent. This is where I've landed. And this is like all those experiences have come to this sort of model that I put out there. And yeah, so that's just where I'm at.
One thing on that before I want to hear what you have to say about that, Wes, is you mentioned the warmups. All right. So, I'm 41. I've been doing this a while. I've been doing CrossFit for whatever, 18 or 19 years now. And I'll tell you what, it's great. Sometimes I still accidentally get PRs on stuff. So that's cool. But one thing for sure is it takes me a long time to warm up. And even we can and I do our classes. I do the classes at the gym because if I do it on my own, I definitely don't warm up. And so it's like first round's a warm up, just kind of wingding it. Right.
Yep.
But I do even doing the full warm up with the class. A lot of times, like even when it's time to start in my head, I'm like, man, really looking forward to minute 5. You know what I mean? Like, I know like once I'm 5 or 6 minutes in, that's when I'm gonna be feeling good, but like, I'm not totally ready to start, or I'm ready to start, but I know that I'm not as warm as I could be. Like when I coached high school wrestling, we would wrestle a full 6-minute match before tournaments, right? Like we wanted these kids, and like that's really, I know as I get older, I kind of need more of that. Like I need my heart rate to get to a certain point. I need more of that to get warm. And it's the idea of doing the Metcon first and the strength portion second. I actually really see the benefit in that now. It's a really interesting point. So appreciate you bringing that up. Wes, your thoughts on, do you ever, I guess we could maybe go this direction if you'd rather, or however you want to take it, but do you ever do a strength component along with the Metcon component? And if so, do you tend to do the strength first or second or both, which I guess supposedly would be the real CrossFit way, right?
Hey, there we are. We're back to CrossFit, right?
Yep.
Variance. Yes, we will vary it, and we will do that every once in a while just to make sure that the body can handle it. And if we see poor performance there, then we will, target that, not bias it. And that's the difference. We're not biasing our programming. We're just going to target that a little bit more to get some more touches on it. And I think the big thing to bring up is that like all of us are very intentional about the things that we do. So we're intentionally programming these things to make our members better. And I think that there's just a lot of gyms out there that I see people coming from where that wasn't happening. And I think to go back to the idea of the warm-up you were talking about, Danny, like that's kind of how we actually deal with this problem, is that we have a little blueprint for warm-ups where what you do is you hit the antagonistic muscle group from yesterday. So if we did quads yesterday, we're going to work the hamstrings a little bit more in our warm-ups to get those quads to relax a little bit, right? You flex one side of the body, the opposite side of the body has to relax to compensate for that. So we'll do like some kettlebell swings or something. If we did a bunch of front squats the day before in our warm-ups, that gets that opposite pattern in there as well. And then we look forward to the day after. Are there any skill components that we can neurologically bring into the warm-up today to prepare athletes who may come in tomorrow for the next day? And I think that it's true. I remember Neil Maddox said it back in the day. He's like, I'm like an old piece of leather. And he's like, I need to be oiled. I need to be warmed up. I need to make sure that this thing is good or else it's going to snap at any moment. And man, do I feel that now, just turning 40 for sure, having kids, not sleeping as much, running the affiliate, like having coaches, not having coaches, having to coach more classes, not. And I think everybody has those stresses in their lives. And it's more about getting compression, I think, than it is about getting loading. If we get more compressions of the joint, we get more synovial fluid, we get more blood flow, we get the tendons and ligaments to feel better. We get to move out of those planes. And I think like what you were just saying, Danny, if we put more emphasis on the warm-ups and the cool downs and more like focus on the intensity of the workout, I think we would have healthier joints. We would have people feeling better, being able to get into ranges of motions quicker and easier because we are warming them up and cooling them down properly, not just expecting them to immediately get into loading.
Something that's interesting you guys both brought up a little bit is Seth, you had mentioned that not running some sort of a program for the strength, right? You're not doing hatch squat program, so you're not doing anything like that. You want a little more variance in your program. Oh, Wes, you mentioned something these are kind of tied together into what I want to ask next is you mentioned the neurological prep, like potentially in the warm up, looking forward to the next day and getting some movement patterns in. Same thing. I generally refer to it as like, movement pattern prep, but that's what you're doing. You're prepping your nervous system, the neurological component, right? And getting used to getting your muscles to fire. And that idea of the warm up, the number of compressions, and I see that you want to get the synovial fluid into the joints for sure. I know myself, especially when it comes to strength, is I need stimulation. I need to my muscles to be strained before they're ready to fire. And that's a neurological component, right? It's not that the muscles aren't strong enough to do it, but as humans, our bodies are trying to conserve as much energy as possible. And so we only want to fire as many muscles as necessary to walk up the stairs. We don't want to fire as many muscles as necessary to squat 420 pounds. That'd be silly, right? You'd be bounding up the stairs, right? Like what a waste. Never know when that bear is going to come at you. You know what I'm saying? So with that, like if we're gonna do heavy squats, a lot of times if I do a wall sit until I'm shaking, right, it seems backwards, like you're going to tire your legs out. But in reality, if I do a wall set until I'm shaking and then I rest like 2 minutes, I'm going to end that day. I will squat way more weight than if I don't force myself to struggle. So in our warm-ups a lot, Buddy, my business partner, Buddy Hitchcock, does our programming. He does a good job in the warm-ups. So we'll do some, as actually was brought up a little bit too earlier with Wes here, is some tempo squats, even just air squats, but like tempo air squats, looking at positioning. Also from a coaching point, you can see the people in there when they're holding positions, right? That's when you can scan the group when they're holding positions, right? And then zoom in as the mechanics go through. But with all that, back to that neurological component of things and getting people ready to fire, I don't know if pushback's the right word, but consider a little bit lack of variance for that purpose. Meaning when we do strength in our affiliate, I'm a big proponent of doing the same movement, the same strength movement through a cycle of 3 to 6 weeks on the same day of the week, and then switching to a different movement a different day of the week. That way your Monday people don't squat every Monday and don't do anything else, type of a thing. But let me to explain a little bit more. For example, if I'm going to do some back squats, if we do back squat sets of 5 on Monday of this week, and we do back squat sets of 3 on Mondays of next week, and we do back squat singles on the following Monday, we are going to get so many more athletes that hit a heavier single than if we just did that single. And the reason being, did they get so much stronger from the sets of 5 and the sets of 3? Like, no, probably not. But, the body adapts, sure. But like that may not likely be the thing that's getting them to that heavy set of 1. But there's a neurological component, and there's the teaching our body to press and to push and the straining against a barbell in those positions. And you're for sure going to hold better positions on that week of singles if you're forced to hold better positions on heavy sets of 3 and heavy sets of 5. Furthermore, on those sets of 5, the weight's going to be lighter. And so it's safer to go to exhaustion when we're tired, right? Because you can't, on a heavy set of 1, you're going to be straining in different ways. Well, if you strained in that way at a lighter weight because it's the 5th rep or the 3rd rep, then you're going to be used to that. And that's a safer way to train straining in those positions, right? So I know that's maybe anti-CrossFit. You're going to do the same movement 3 weeks in a row. Wild. But anyway, so Seth, I know you look like you've been wanting to talk for a few minutes here. Well, what are your thoughts on that? Is that heresy in the CrossFit world? Is there a point for that? Like, what are your thoughts on doing the same thing a few weeks in a row to prime them for the heavy day?
It's totally fine if that's what you choose to do.
That's what I'm talking about.
It's totally
next,
fine.
Wes.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Hold on. Here's why I'm not pushing back on you choosing.
Oh, you can. That's fine. Yeah.
No, because there's no reason to. Like, if that works for your members in your community and you're getting enough attendance that's helping them set goals for like the next 3 to 6 weeks, whatever it is, it's totally fine. What I would say in terms of all the points you brought up that help you progress in the back squat, you can coach those same points, you can expose them the same amount of times, and you can still move things around and provide different stimuli to the back squat. You could have sets of 10 one week on a Wednesday, and then next week, the following Friday, you could have singles and back and forth. Over time, it's all going to come out in the wash for those that are consistent. That's my take on it. So to try to say, hey, we're really shooting for 3 weeks from now, I'd like to see you guys really get under a heavy single. I can just build that in my program the same way, set up the conditioning piece beforehand to be lower intensity, super range of motion focused, super bracing focused, and then set them up to be super primed in that specific session to have the best opportunity that they've had to hit a heavy single in however long we've programmed it. So what you're doing is totally fine. And for the people whose brains work like linear progression, like this is how it works. Like there are members that really take to that stuff and they get behind it and they can look ahead and set their goals for it. Others just need to show up consistently and they'll get, I think, the same benefits from if they're being coached and if they're getting into the gym 4 or 5 times a week. And so the other thing, like, I just don't like the repetitiveness of that because we have some members who are very fixed schedules, some members whose schedules jump around, some members. I would hate to go 3 weeks with somebody who never shows up on a Monday and doesn't squat for a month. That would drive me crazy. So like, that's their problem. They're not showing up, but like, it's also my job to balance and spread that out the best I can for everybody. So that's the only reason I wouldn't do it. Do I think that stuff can work? Sure, it can work. Should it be shorter term in a CrossFit gym? Yes. Don't run a 12-week cycle. I know gyms that do that. That is actually stupid. I'll just tell you that's stupid. But spreading it out like that and just being consistent with the coaching, I think you'll get the same results at the end of the day with mixing it up a bit more. That's my take.
Yeah. Also, I trained 5 years as a weightlifter. And so I love me some linear progressions and type thing, right? I don't love percentages.
Great for weightlifting.
Don't love percentages, but I love the idea of diminishing reps and increasing weights and working. And one more thing on that, and everything you said is totally valid. But we find in the affiliate, generally people are creatures of habit, and just like your members could go to any class time throughout the day, your 5 a.m. people are your 5 a.m. people by and large. Like if I show up and I'm coaching 4 p.m. and a 5 a.m.er is there, what's the first thing I say to him? Oh, 8 hours late today. Right. It's like, every time. Right. And so I find it's the same with the days of the week, right? Like your people in general who go to the gym, call it Monday, Wednesday, Friday for whatever reason, even though the membership is unlimited, that's just what works out. In general, they're there Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so that the benefit of, so again, I'm not trying to sound defensive. It's just like another point to the other side of it is that in general, your Monday people are Monday people, and you're going to see them for 3 weeks in a row. And so you can build on that over those 3 weeks. And then I do, though, agree 100%. I think that after those 3 weeks, whatever the next strength movement is, or whatever the thing you're doing next should be on a different day of the week. It shouldn't always be Monday is, heavy squat day or whatever, because then again, those people, they get a lot of that and the other people get none of that. Right. So I think that those heavy days should be then rotated through different days of the week and, in different movement patterns, all that type of stuff. But just with the people showing up. So Wes, what are your thoughts on just that whole idea of doing some sort of, if not direct linear progression, but just same movement pattern, same day of the week for a few weeks in a row in order to neurologically prime people and practice different portions of the movement?
Well, when I think of neurological adaptations, I think of practice. I don't think of stimulus. So like when we want neurological adaptations, we need to practice at low heart rates for a lot of repetitions to get the brain to adapt to it. When we want speed or power, that's going to be a combination of the two. When we want, coordination, agility, accuracy, balance, that's going to be organic change, right? So what we're looking for is touches on everything as much as possible. And I think making sure, look, the answer to the question is yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. Go ahead, program it. And if your people are getting better and they're loving it, and like Seth said, they're showing up, right? And they're stoked and the vibe in the gym is great and people are having an awesome time. It's okay, good. That's the whole point of the community and the spirit of CrossFit. But what I see is when people come from a gym, most of the time, I'm sure not your gym, knowing Buddy and knowing yourself and knowing what great of coaches you guys, I did Buddy's last level too. So I know he's an amazing coach. And I know you guys are doing your due diligence there, but when I see people coming from other gyms that do that, 5-3-1, a few week cycles or whatever, and they're kind of upset that we don't do that in a sense, like, well, how am I going to get a good workout? And then I see their range of motion, I see their technique, and I see the way they move, and I'm like, this is why we don't do that. You didn't get coached, you got beat up, basically, is what you got, and so, yeah, I think it's fine as long as the vibe is good and the coaching is great and they're getting a range of motion and they're hitting positions and they're getting coached. I just see that when we add that stuff in, we don't have coaching. We have reps for sure. We're just missing, if you've taken the coaches prep, there's I can't remember the name of the online courses, but in it, they actually specifically say, one thing we don't want to see is, all right, guys, here's what the back squat looks like. Okay, now go ahead and give me 5. And that's usually what we see is we don't have time, so let's just move and I'll coach as we go. But what we want to see instead is okay, put it on your back and put your hands here. Okay, now put your feet here. Okay, now lower on down, hold in the bottom, and let me get a second to look. Okay, cool. Now stand up. Hey, you need to go a little lower on the next one. You need to drive your knees out a little bit more on the next one. Okay, I'm going to check on that. Ready? Everybody down. And they're going from macro to micro to macro, and they're doing the things we teach them at the level 2s. I just don't think you have the time, honestly. At least I'm a shitty coach if that's the case, because I never have the time.
Yeah, well, okay, that solves that.
Can I jump in with Wes's point there?
Yeah, so absolutely.
I think you're right with that, Wes. But the one thing that I would also say on top of that is if we're just going to use back squat as the example, let's say there are members who are doing their 300th, 500th back squat session at your gym that you've seen how many times, right? You've made adjustments on them over and over and over again. you're gonna give them a little bit of encouragement, give them one little cue, like move on to others that are newer, that are maybe on their 20th session ever, that still are not working on their depths. All these positions you're going to change. And so I think as you get more in tune to your community and your class and your members, you can become much more efficient in coaching those things too. Yeah. So if you're blindly coaching 15 people off the street through back squat and conditioning to follow, you might be in big trouble, right? If you don't have a really, really good plan. But if you have a good plan, you typically know the people that are coming in. Johnny doesn't need your advice in depth for the 500th time he squatted in over the 10 years he's been a member at your gym. Like there's a little bit of like actual like real world like application and how the coaching goes. Cause like not every class is like a level 2 or like, you know what I mean? Like broken down like that. It's practical in some sense, but it's just not going to be reality, I think, on a lot of days. Does that make sense?
I think there's a middle ground there for sure.
Sure.
You can definitely hit. And that's kind of what you're always shooting for. It's like, I'm not trying to, hey, let's say the same thing every day. Right. 15 years. Like there's got to be nuance there. There's got to be different words that are used. Yes. You got to spend more time with this person, but even that just takes time, right?
For sure.
Yeah. So one thing that we haven't really talked about that it gets brought up a lot in this conversation is intensity versus volume, right? Maybe we've touched on a little bit, but what I mean specifically is, advocates of a single piece in a class being the main focus and not doing a strength and a conditioning portion. We'll often talk about the intensity factor, right? And so I know myself personally, having done, both, strength and Metcon many, many times in workouts, also having done one thing workouts. And I have a lot of experience doing this type of stuff. I know my way around a barbell. I don't need a lot of teaching per se. I do need a lot of movement pattern work mostly to get warm, right? And it's always good to kind of grease the groove, whatever groove that is you're trying to grease, by the way. Always a good idea. And so we want to make sure to get set there. But I found myself for sure, if I knew that we had Fran coming up after they set of back squats, and I, maybe did something that felt like it was solid 90% effort, I'm not sure that I'm putting more weight on the bar for my next set, even if I do have one more set. I'm probably going to peel back the intensity a little bit because I know that I'm about to go into the fire. You know what I'm saying? And so, or I'll go the other way. I'll say, you know what, Fran, quite frankly, that, you know what I mean? I plan on 70%ing that today anyway. And so I'm going to let it rip on these squats, and then I can use that as an excuse to mail it in on the other portion. And I try not to do that because I know I'm doing it, but I also know that occasionally I would do it. Right. And so to think other people don't obviously is ridiculous. So just kind of, go Seth first on this. Like, what are your thoughts on, having that second component? Is there a concern of the person not pushing the intensity enough on, one or both, either or both of those, because they're both in the same hour session?
For me, I don't have a concern for that at all. What you said actually is not a problem to me. So if you do have two pieces and they're a little bit different focuses, heavy back squat and Fran, and you want to choose one over the other, or what should happen is the programmer should dictate the point of the stimulus for that day. So sure. maybe Fran is the focus and you're only trying to get to 80% on your back squat to get some reps in for quality. And we know if you don't overdo it, those back squat reps will make that thruster bar feel real light and nice when you're done. So like that could be actually a tactic used to not only coach up the back squat, get someone a little more consistent with that sort of stuff, talk about bracing, loading, positions, all that. And then you get to finish something off with anywhere from a 2 to 6 minute workout, depending on who's doing it and how you're scaling it and all that stuff. And maybe that back squat actually helps really warm up not only the depth for the thruster, but the power and speed that you can deliver that bar. You might find someone just primed enough after that example to actually PR because they went into Fran the last time, not quite as warm as they could be, central nervous system not as fired up, the weight didn't feel as light. They broke when they didn't need to break. So you never know when something like that example actually lights the fire and creates a better situation in class than just doing a long drawn out warm up, teaching the thruster to somebody for the however many time, going over some pull-up skills and then sending them through. You might be doing them a favor doing it the other way. That's just one example, but I think you get my point. And how you program it and how you want the stimulus to be delivered will dictate a lot of what those results are. So I think that a lot of that falls on the programmer and coach's shoulders to deliver that message correctly, balance out that intensity and volume the way that they see the overall load and how it should be portrayed across a week, a month, whatever. And then try to get the members to execute on that.
Wes, is this part of your argument for one workout, or is Seth being too reasonable?
No, I think it's like, number one, I'm just stoked the person's there. I'm stoked they're there. I'm stoked they're working out. I'm stoked that they've got stuff on them and they're pulling and they're pushing. This is great. But if I was going to actually program that, I'd be like, hey, let's front squat and then let's do Fran, right? Yeah. Instead of let's back squat, or let's do heavy pull-ups and then let's do Fran. How often do you do those? And I would make more of an argument in that direction, honestly, than let's again load in the sagittal plane on the spine more,
something you guys are both talking about also is, so the coaching, that's been brought up a lot of times, and I want to get to that in just a minute, but, kind of get towards wrapping this up. But another thing is, bringing up the coach's job to tell them which part is the most important part for that day. Or maybe you let them decide. Maybe you just tell them, hey, look, here's the deal. We have Fran after this. If you feel like chasing that, if you woke up today and you felt it in your nuggets, that you wanted to get after Fran, that's something Wes and I were talking about before Seth got on.
Way to bring that in. That was good.
Yeah. If you woke up this morning, you felt in your nuggets that today's the day to get after Fran, then maybe you do, keep your back squats to a reasonable intensity and, plan on doing that. Or if today you came in thinking that, whatever hell or high water, you made sure to over caffeinate, you're going to attack that barbell and then go through the motions in Fran, then maybe that's okay. And what this makes me think of, I've been thinking about this a lot. Actually, I think it might've been Pat Barber actually, who was talking about this, is, a lot of people think of CrossFit, and a big misconception is that high intensity is maximum intensity all the time. And that if you're not going at maximum intensity, you're not doing CrossFit, or you're not getting the benefits of it. And that's really not true. Because if you think about it, the actual CrossFit prescription is performed at high intensity. It doesn't say at maximum intensity. Furthermore, if it's performed at high intensity, then by definition, there's going to be a low and a medium intensity, which then we would say low intensity is probably 0 to 35%, which means medium intensity is probably 35 to 70%, we'll call it. And high intensity is 70% and above. And if you look at it that way, really, when you come into the gym, if you're doing functional movements and you're doing them at 70% intensity or higher, then you're doing CrossFit, right? You're still doing the program. You're not doing something totally different. It's not a bodybuilding workout. You are still building capacity in these ways. I think that can sometimes lead people in the direction of mailing in too frequently and maybe not pushing as hard as would benefit them at times. However, I know, again, myself, just doing our class workouts, if I'm showing up to the gym for the sometimes even third or fourth day in a row, a lot of times what gets myself to go to that class is I tell today's a 70% day, and I'm going to go in and I'm working at 70%. And some days it's the same thing. With lifting weights now, I used to tell the weights what to do. Now I let them tell me. So some days they say, let it rip. And, maybe I thought it was a 70% day, but I'm feeling good, and you go for it. And some days not. Some days I start warming up and the weights are saying not today, buddy. And then I gotta calm it down a little. Right. And listening to myself has definitely been beneficial and allows me to keep going in and working out. And I've never once left regretting having shown up that day. Right.
Right.
And so that's kind of something you both really kind of touched on a little bit there, is that, you can do the two things, but they don't have to both be maximum effort. In fact, that would potentially be irresponsible, right?
The old writings, if you go back in the journal, when Greg actually writes a whole article about programming, there's a big portion of that talking about varied intensities. Yeah. So the high intensity tagline is an easy way to describe what a lot of our workouts feel like and what CrossFit is, but varied intensity is part of the prescription. So that's real important.
That's fantastic. So thank you for that.
I would add the word relative to it, and relative to how you feel and psychologically every day, right? You have to go off of that.
Yeah. And running a 10K has been on main side a few times. You don't run a high intensity 10K. Well, I guess you can, but it's relative high to the distance that you run, right? So you have to be able to pace out this 40-minute effort. You're not sprinting out of the start and then trying to hold on. And the same thing applies to longer workouts or whatever else. So
yeah, fantastic. All right. So one last thing on this that I just want to bring up, and if you guys have any input, but that's one theme that's been coming up time and time again is the coaching. And I think that's what this really comes down to. And honestly, from us, this is why recently we went from doing 2 pieces, to call it 3 days a week, 2 or 3 days a week, we would do a strength and a Metcon, to now primarily just doing one main thing. And then if we do something else, it's definitely like a secondary, more of accessory work, which Wes kind of touched in on the accessory work as far as different movement patterns and planes and that type of stuff. I know what I've been doing. I've been doing this for a long time. Like, I feel like I do a pretty good job as a coach. Buddy is fantastic. We have our entire staff is fantastic, right? We've been doing it a really long time. And we really coach these classes. But there were times where I felt like I was a clock manager more than a coach. And nothing irritated me more than we go and we do a strength portion. And by the time, first of all, the warm up is kind of cut short. We do 5 minutes of dead bugs and, a couple air squats, then get on a bar. And then after, like to a degree, obviously a little hyperbole here. And then we're done though. And now we have, call it a 12-minute AMRAP afterwards. And there's GHD sit-ups. And you basically say, all right, by the time they get the weights out, they put the weights away, then they go over the next thing. And you say, all right, we got GHD sit-ups. Either you can do those or you can't. And so everybody go grab an ab mat. And and then you two head over to the GHD. And then 3, 2, 1, go. And then you finish 1 minute before the end of class. And there's no cool down. There's no stretching. There's no anything. You give high fives, tell everyone great job. And then I'm sitting there. I'm like, what the fuck did I do? I got people tired and sweaty. That's silly. That's not the goal. Is it better than nothing? For sure. Everybody got a good workout. Everyone was like, all that type of stuff is still true. But that's not the goal. That's not what we're here for. We're not just here to make people tired and sweaty. We're here to get people more fit and fit for the long term and, that type of thing. Right. And so that's kind of my take on it. Now, is there a way to do that with 2 pieces? Absolutely. And actually, since we've kind of switched to more coaching, we do more skill work, more movement prep. And the skill work isn't pounding the exact same things over and over again every time you do the movement pattern, but it is making sure that you touch on these things, right? And making sure that you do go through the movement patterns and doing that stuff. It's more thorough warm up, but within that warm up is a lot of the movement prep, getting ready for things. And you can work those in different ways. And since we've been doing that, really enjoyed it. We've gotten good feedback from people. But with that said, just yesterday, we did what you guys are talking about, and actually Seth's method is there was a workout that had some lunge sets, some single arm dumbbell push press, and some sit-ups. And then immediately following that, you had 10 minutes to find a 1-rep strict press, right? And so it was very much a movement pattern stuff in the dumbbell push press, moved right into that. It all worked together beautifully. And we prepped for that. We've definitely found more success with that being the exception more than the rule. But it's really interesting to hear, Seth, you the advocate of it, but also don't do it the way most people do, which most people it's, hey, boom, strength first, then do the workout. Yeah. And we expect you to, go back to the well both times, that type of thing. That's that competitor program Wes was talking about. And that is okay for somebody whose goal is to compete and use CrossFit as a sport and is going to be in the gym for 2 hours. For a 1-hour class and with Gen Pop, that's generally not going to be the most effective way to get them in the best shape. And what is the most effective way is through coaching and helping with movement patterns and getting people healthy joints, happy joints, get their movement patterns on par and progress them in their skills. Last thing on this little soapbox that I'm on right now is the idea is in scaling movements and in the progressions is to progress them in their skills. You don't want to have that. Okay, today's GHD sit-ups, you either have them or you don't, and you move on. That's not the goal. The goal is whatever they're doing for modification should be getting them closer to doing the actual thing, not just we have pull-ups, you don't, so you're doing ring rows and next thing down the line. That is not the best thing for people. You can get a great workout that way, but in the affiliates, the goal should not be to get people tired and sweaty. The goal should be to make people fitter. And part of being fitter is agility, coordination, balance, all those 10 physical skills, not just tired and sweaty. It's a lot shorter list, be easier for murals, but not as effective. So that's that.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll add to that real quick. So like with the 2-piece day, if you do have a longer day, there are days where the pieces can just lead to kind of the end that you had talked about. You know, you got 2 minutes left, you're putting equipment away, high-fiving, and that's the way it ends. There are days that happens. If that does happen though, more often than not, it's usually due to being unprepared. So you didn't look at the workouts ahead of time. You didn't think about what your points of performance were going to be. You didn't really think about how long things were going to take. You talked at the whiteboard for 4 extra minutes, started telling jokes. Your warm up didn't get started. You didn't have good control of your class. Like
people love jokes though.
I mean, that's throw one in there.
Just do them while they're moving. Just do it.
Exactly. A lot of that, when you become a very concise and like efficient coach, you can do a lot with a little time. And I think like with the example of anything, like there's a lift and then there's toes to bar in a workout. If you're focusing on the lift or certain pattern that day, and that's what you're coaching, and you're coaching certain points of performance there are times where it's okay to say, hey, toes to bar are part of the workout. If you have them, and I need you to have at least sets of 7 to be able to do this RX. Otherwise, you can scale the reps down to this. This is a good option. Or, V-ups are great, single leg, whatever. You give them whatever scale. But you have your scales prepared. It's not a free-for-all. You don't have toes to bar? Figure it out. Go crazy, guys. We're starting in 2 minutes. Like, you have things that are options, and you lay those options out there. The next time toes to bar come out, hopefully that's the thing that your points of performance are based on. So it doesn't have to be every movement every time that you're coaching to the death of that movement. You pick your stuff, you hone in on that stuff. Hopefully those points that you give are lasting points that they take with them and they can replicate when they come back instead of trying to coach it all. And that's my big point. I try to just try to hit home is pick small things that make big differences that you can coach, that people can understand. Don't try to overcoach and coach it all.
Yeah. What are the levers? One thing on that, I think you're totally right. Talked about having your scales ahead of time, your modifications ahead of time. One thing on that I try to do, I don't always do a great job of it, but something that I really like and try to remember is in those modifications also is going from the other direction. It's easy to say, hey, we got pull-ups or chest bar pull-ups. If you can't do chest bar pull-ups, do pull-ups. If you can't do that, do this. If you can't do that, do this. And then you have people in class, they got a list of shit they can't do. And that sometimes can be discouraging, right? And so sometimes it's nice to go the other way. Hey, check it out. Today we got chest bar pull-ups. If you can do ring rows, then that's a great way to go. If those are easy for you, put your feet on a box. Now you're doing, feet elevated ring rows. That's gonna be a little more difficult. If those are not a big problem, we can do some jumping chest to bar pull-ups here. We want to make sure go there. And you work your way up through the progressions. And then instead, what you have is a class full of people who are checking out boxes they can do, which is encouraging. So anyone that's listening,
that's a good tip.
Layered progression. That's like what you should do to get them to the RX movement, no matter where you're at, honestly. And then everybody kind of falls in, like, oh, okay, I see what I'm going to do here.
Yeah. And so going from that other direction is a positive way, especially for people who are newer and are lacking in skills and are working on progressing in their skills. So I'd encourage people to do that. Also, then people leave feeling good instead of leaving feeling like they can't do anything, right?
Yep. Yeah, dude, you want to make them feel amazing for that hour.
There it is. All right. Seth, you get like 10 seconds on these. Well, you're going to get 10 seconds. Wes, you're going to get 10 seconds. Here we go. Wes, what is the most we'll go Seth first. What is the most over-programmed movement?
Snatch.
Ooh, just because yours is terrible. That's why. All right. Wes, the most over-programmed movement.
Oh, man. Burpees.
Burpees. Really? Okay, interesting. Man, I feel like I spent an hour on each one of those answers. Okay. All right, here we go. What is worse? Seth, what is worse? No whiteboard brief or no cool down?
No whiteboard brief.
Wes?
Yeah, no whiteboard brief for sure.
Yeah, hell yeah. We don't cool down either. Cool downs for suckers. All right.
These are traps. These are just traps.
You want to try to cool down. That's the goal. Both. You want both.
We don't have time for that shit. The cool down is putting away your weights while the next class starts their warm up because you're running late.
Them, hey, if you got extra time, sit on a bike for a little bit, go on a foam roller, and then get out of here if you can. All right, see you guys.
All right, all right. And what is this one? Might try to don't overthink this. All right, Seth, what is your favorite inappropriate stimulus that you've ever accidentally programmed? What have you programmed that at the end of the day or at the end of doing the workout, you said, oh, that was a giant mistake. I messed these people up. Wes, you want to go first? While Seth thinks?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Wes.
Yeah, Kalsu.
Just in general, no one should ever do it.
Like I've done it a few times. Every time I do it, I go, why did I program that? Like, that's just brutal, man. That just messes people up. Like, it's not even fun. People leave, they're just like, I didn't even do 4 rounds of thrusters. I just did 4 rounds. I didn't even finish. I got like 60 reps and everything hurts. That's like how Kalsu ends for everyone. So
yep, pretty much. I'll say I don't know a specific, but probably an interval that I way overdid, did not get enough rest for, and probably 5 rounds should have been wrapped up in about 3. So yeah, something like that.
I'm going to pop in on this real quick because I've done this thing a few times. It's more of a mental challenge than physical. And my buddy Corey Gregory does this. He does 400-meter walking lunges every day for like 30 days. For the first 2 or 3 days, it's pretty rough. By the time you get to day 10, you're fine, and then it's just 20 minutes out of your day. But I've mentioned it to a few, and I've done it for stretches of like 43 days, a couple different times. What's that?
I remember you doing that.
Yeah.
Now.
Every time I've told someone about it, they always end up hurt. Like every time.
But you don't, right?
No, I'm
and
cool.
I think that's how most people program. They're like, it feels fine for me.
Like, I get really tired, but it's fine. But also I probably just like go really slow on those days where I feel terrible, and they're probably still trying to, I don't know what's going on. But all right. And then your favorite workout to coach. I'll go first. Air Force WOD. Ooh. Dude, I love people just getting after it, man. Also, any workout where they have to stop every minute and do something before getting back to it. That's just so fun to watch people just charge us into the game. Just wait for my next round of burpees before moving on.
I'll say Nate, just because it's a good chance to get people to do some higher skill progressions in small doses that they don't normally get to try. So everyone's leaving like, wow, I can't believe I did that today. So I'll say Nate.
All right.
Yeah, I would say that too, but I'd also say Helen. Watching people push on Helen, especially towards the end, it's like that's intensity. There it is. You felt it. Like great positions. Like I love it, and you get to coach that kip swing in there. It's just great.
Maybe in a future episode, I'll tell the story of one time when I did Helen without any underwear on because I had to throw them away in the bathroom right before doing the workout when no one else was at the gym. All right. So this is a wrap for the debut of Not Mostly Unbroken. We decided on Not in My Box. All right. If you overestimated your abilities and fitness level today, congratulations. You're one of us. A big thanks to Wes and Seth. Go buy some coffee from caffeineandkilos.com. Of course, be sure to follow Wes if you want to be a better coach, and sign up for the Jump Ship programming with Seth if you want to do 2 pieces and not burn out your CNS. All right.
That's fair.
Yeah, there we go. All right. If you want to see more of this, tell us what topic to tackle next, because apparently the 3 of us don't have enough meetings already. And this episode is just like your last grinder workout. It wasn't pretty, but it was mostly unbroken.
Thanks, Annie.